Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining. I'm going to take these headphones off now that I know my audio is working. Thank you all for joining. Good to see everybody here. Got a nice crew going on here in the chat. I see a lot of questions coming in, which is fantastic. I do want to try something new today, and that is, I do need a second to actually get this up. Where is my video ID? I would love to know where it is that you are actually joining from. So give me a second here before you do anything. And I am going to see if that works. Looks like it's working. This is great. Okay, so what I want you to do is go ahead and tell me where you are joining from in the chat. And we're going to see where in the world people are. I hooked this up the other day when I was working on using the YouTube API instead of the sort of CSS hack method of getting the chat. So while I was in there, I was like, well, wouldn't it be fun to show a map of where everybody is joining from? Because people like to say city names. And this is great. This is working wonderful. Good to see everybody here. A lot of folks from all over the place. This is wonderful. I'm gonna leave this up for a few more seconds while I go through some of the questions. We've got a lot of questions on. So yeah, today we're going to talk all about the ATEM Mini Pro. Anything else you want to know related to that as well? I'm going to go through the chat and answer questions. If you do have a question, please make sure you @ me. Please make sure you type @Aaron Parecki, and that will make sure that it pops up nice and highlighted on my screen when I'm looking through these. And that makes it a lot easier for me to keep track. So this is wonderful. So this is a pretty fun little map. This is awesome. Thank you all for joining. So what happened to my camera? Focus. Okay, there we go. Don't need the countdown anymore. So yeah, we got a lot of questions in the chat when people were already waiting for the countdown. So let me just see if there's any. Yeah, great. Okay, cool. Yeah, if you're wondering how I did that map, it's actually almost entirely just JavaScript. So there's like a little bit of code in there that deals with the YouTube API to go and pull out the comments from the live video. That was the hardest part. YouTube API is pretty finicky with rate limits. And speaking of rate limits, I should probably turn off that. Map because it will eat through my credits very quickly. So yeah, that was a bit of a piece of work there. But yeah, and then it's mainly just JavaScript. So I pull out all the like hello and greetings and from and those kinds of words, and I look for just place names. So it's looking for like 1 or 2 words that is not one of those lists of words. And then it runs it through Google's geocoder to turn it into a place actually on the map. And then it drops a pin using the Google Maps API. If you're interested in that, in like actually using it in your own streams, let me know, because I've been thinking it'd be fun to turn it into like a real website that anybody can use. All I did was just drop in like a video URL from YouTube, and I have to connect my account so it has an API key and stuff. But it's pretty fun, I thought. So thanks for playing along. So yeah, let me take a look at the chat. Oh yeah, a little bit about what's going on here today. So I've got, you can probably hear my audio is a lot worse today because I'm also like in a different set, I'm like in a different part of the room. Back there is where I normally like shoot the videos for YouTube. But what's going on today is we have, this is my desk and I'm in like the middle of the space, and I just put the drywall on that wall back there. So that is all new, and it used to be just exposed insulation. And it turns out exposed insulation does a very good job at absorbing sound. And now that it is sheetrock, flat surface, it is bouncing the sound back to me. So it's very echoey in here. And I did not have time to do any sort of soundproofing because I also don't want to install anything yet because I need to still paint the walls. So that's what's going on. Apologies if it's a little bit more noisy in here than normal. On my desk, though, I've got a couple of the ATEM Minis here. I've got 2 of the Pros, and that is what we're going to play with today. I don't have a good way to adjust this camera. I'm sorry. This is the problem with a one-person show. And I've also got this little travel router here. I thought we would play with this and try to get the ATEM Mini on Wi-Fi. So that's some things we can try today too. But yeah, so there was a question here about is it a good idea to link 2 ATEMs together if you need more than 4 shots? Thinking about adding a Mini to a Pro, give me 7 angles. What do you think about that? The digital gymnastics involved. I can confirm that there is a lot of digital gymnastics involved in doing that. Let me go back to show you my desk here. This is what I'm looking at when I'm running this, and this is the multi-view of the main ATEM Mini, and then actually in the corner here is the other ATEM Mini. So I can run multi-view out, and then you can see that it's a little small, but you can see that it's switched between the multi-view or like one of the camera angles. And I've also got my my camera running into both. So it's on a splitter. So both of these cameras run into both ATEMs. So I have both camera angles on both ATEMs. And yes, that is a lot of gymnastics involved in doing that. But it does mean that if I wanted to, for example, show you the multi-view of the second ATEM, I can, because I can just switch to that input 4, and now you get the multi-view. Now, you would never actually do this on a stream that wasn't talking about doing this, but what it does mean is that you can switch using the buttons on the ATEM, the sort of behind the back ATEM Mini. You can switch that HDMI out to any of the camera angles. And I think I only actually have 2 inputs on that. I don't have the other 2 there, but I can then do, switching on that. Of course, you probably do that with macros, and then you would get your additional inputs that way. It definitely does work, but it's a lot to manage. And you'll probably notice as I'm switching around, I will probably make a few mistakes, especially because of the way that I've got today this hooked up. I forgot one of my HDMI dongles at home, and that meant that I didn't have enough to plug in my second laptop, which is where I normally run the chat from. So I'm actually running the chat now from the same computer that I'm going to be showing you stuff on my screen, which is a lot to manage. So apologies if I make any mistakes on that. So we have some questions about the Stream Deck. I saw this pop up a bunch during the chat. The Stream Deck. I actually have one here. I haven't actually set it up yet. Where is my other camera? So this is a pretty cool device. It's got all these buttons on it. I like it a lot. I'm actually using this to control everything right now, which I've talked about before. This is an app on the iPad called Strata Macros. And this is a good device as well. Gives you the same idea. The buttons here run macros in the ATEM Mini directly. Like this is talking directly to it over the network. The Stream Deck does things differently. The problem with the Stream Deck is that you need a computer in the middle. So the Stream Deck is USB, and there is no USB port on the ATEM Mini that can deal with the Stream Deck. It needs special software to convert that into something that the ATEM Mini can recognize. So you run this little program on your computer that accepts the button presses from the Stream Deck, and then it converts it to ATEM commands over the network. So once it's set up, it's great and it works wonderfully. But it does mean that you need a computer there while you're running it. Whereas this I can just run around with, and it's wireless, and I can run around the room with this, which is I'm not gonna do here, but during a live event, it's super handy. And this talks directly to it, so I don't need a computer there. So you can definitely use a Stream Deck, not directly with the ATEM Mini, but through a computer. And that is, so it's a caveat there. John Barker from Here to Record has some excellent videos, tutorials on how to set that up. So definitely go watch his. Here's a comment. One thing that's really limiting with the ATEM Mini Pro is the Chroma keying when switching cameras. You can't switch fast without reselecting the Chroma backgrounds for each shot. That is kind of true. So there's actually two different ways this works. And let me show you this in the ATEM Mini software. Managing all the buttons, computer, and yes, now you can see the computer screen. This is the software control for the ATEM Mini, and this is the one that's actually live, so I don't want to press anything on here. But if you open up the ATEM Setup app, which is not the software control app, that is this app. Let me go over to the test one. There's an option in here, which is chroma keyer, drop with transition or stay on with transition. And I don't have a good chroma key set up here, so we probably can't really test it out. But this is a way where when you switch cameras, it can optionally leave the chroma key on instead of turning it off, which is I think the default. So try that out if you're having trouble with that. Cool. So let's keep going through the chat. So for live productions with 2 or 3 people talking, would you recommend using an audio mixer? And if so, which one would be a good pick? This is also a very good question. Thanks, Tommy. I've been trying to figure this out myself as well, and I've been working through a few different options here. Obviously, there's not a lot of live productions with 2 to 3 people talking at the moment, mostly just remote stuff. So I'm focusing on the remote part right now. But so there is an audio mixer in the ATEM Mini, and it is a very good audio mixer. It has a lot of controls for adjusting things. I love it. It is fantastic. It's why this microphone sounds half decent. But if you have like a bunch of like XLR mics or lav mics on people, you probably want to move that into an external mixer so that you get more physical knobs to turn. Most of those are going to be just fine. The only thing you might, sorry about the truck outside. The only thing you may encounter there is really only a problem when you're using this virtually for like virtual events, which is what I'm trying to focus on right now, which is that I want to be able to talk to somebody over Skype or Zoom, have them see what you're seeing here and hear me, and then feed their video back into the ATEM as a camera angle I can switch to, which means I can't send them the full audio from the ATEM, otherwise they would hear themselves. So you need to have a way to do what's called mix minus, and basically it needs to be able to send them a feed without their own audio, which you can't do in the ATEM itself. So you need a separate mixer for that. There's a bunch of different options for that. I'm going to try a couple. I'll see how it goes. I should have one next week to try. Probably not going to do it live because that's just a lot of stuff to manage, but that's something. I just saw a follow-up from about the stay with transition. So you can't have 3 shots with unique chroma backgrounds. Yeah, that is true. So you get sort of one setting at a time for chroma key. What you can do, however, is, which is what I'm doing here, is macros. Macros are super, super powerful. So what you're seeing right now is it's when I press a button, the button is called show chat. Is that going to focus? It's not going to focus. The button on my iPad is called show chat. And when I press that, what it's actually doing is it is running. It's like enabling a whole bunch of I can just show you actually. How about that? I can show you on my computer because I've got the code pulled up here. So let me go back to this view. Here is my macro, which is, there it is, show chat. So what it's doing is first of all, it switches the key to a Luma key. It chooses the camera angles, and then it sets all the settings for the clip and gain and stuff like that. It then positions that window, because the window actually looks like this. So it then moves that down and crops it over here. And then it waits a frame and then brings it on air. And basically what this does is it means that you can have as many chroma settings as you want, as long as you have macros for them. So then you press a button, it changes all the settings and then switches to that angle. So that ends up working out perfectly fine, in my opinion. And that means you can do quite a lot of macros with it. So cool. So there's also Zach says Skype does a good job of canceling out return audio. I haven't needed to do mix minus. That's a thought. I don't necessarily love that idea of having Skype actually cancel the audio, especially because it would definitely be delayed at that point. But the real problem, like, I don't want to be sending back their audio in the first place, even if it can cancel it out, because if it doesn't do it, it's super distracting for the person on the other end. Let me go try to get to some more of these questions though. So, what's going on in the chat here? So, and again, reminder, if you do have a question for me, please mention my whole name in there so that it shows up bright orange on my end. Is there a difference in the image quality if you stream using USB as a webcam to OBS or straight to YouTube, internally, or using HDMI output to a capture card? So yeah, there are three ways to get video out of the ATEM Mini Pro. There's the HDMI port, there's the USB webcam port, there's USB recording to a disk. I guess there's 4 ways, and then it can actually stream directly over RTMP. So, there are four different outputs. The recording to disk and streaming to YouTube, those are the same. So like whatever is being recorded to disk is what's being streamed to YouTube. That's going to be using the internal encoder on the ATEM Mini Pro. It is a very decent encoder. That is what you're seeing right now. So this is YouTube this is streaming to YouTube from the ATEM Mini Pro on streaming high, which is 6 megabits a second at 30 frames a second. I think it does a perfectly fine job. But the HDMI output does output a full HDMI signal, which is obviously a better signal because it's not going through that compression. You would then run that into a separate encoder to stream to YouTube. So then you're setting your quality is based on whatever the encoder is that you're using at the other end of the HDMI port. And there are a wide range of quality differences in those encoders. So it's totally up to that end. Photo Joseph does often streams from the ATEM Mini, but out via HDMI to an Epiphan Pearl, which is a very expensive device. And that's good also, although honestly, I don't think it looks that much different than the ATEM streaming directly. And then as for the USB out to a computer, that is giving the computer a webcam feed as mJPEG, which is a series of JPEG frames. So it is compressing each frame as a JPEG, and then it's then up to your computer to take those frames and recompress it as H.264. So at that point, OBS is then doing its own encoding and software, streaming that to YouTube. And that's, it also does a fine job. I don't like doing that way because I don't want to put my computer through that much work. I don't like when it does that much work. Speaking of OBS, there were a bunch of questions in here about can you hook up the ATEM Mini's output as an input to something like OBS? And yeah, absolutely, you totally can. It does work fine. So I wonder if I can actually, I didn't think about doing that here, but yeah, like it's just like every other camera you'd add into OBS. You don't use the special Blackmagic setting, which is used for their capture cards. You use just the webcam because it shows up like a webcam. And then you can, of course, position, scale, and crop in OBS, which is a very cool feature in OBS, just like any other webcam you would use. Definitely works. Great. So, okay, cool. Let me see talking about, oh yeah, so here, speaking of OBS, important question about audio delay. It seems to be going out of sync during the video. Even if in OBS I set up the correct audio delay, it all works in the first few seconds and then drifts. So I can tell you that this is not a problem with the ATEM Mini. It is a problem with the computer and getting that video out of USB. If you are running your ATEM Mini Pro through a USB hub before it gets to your computer, you're almost certainly going to have problems. And there are very few hubs that are actually good enough to do this. I have had a lot of my coworkers struggling with this, and there are a couple that do work. There's like one of the Thunderbolt 3 ones works fine. A lot of them don't work. So if, and what ends up happening is that like, it just starts struggling and it can't keep those two feeds in sync. And yeah, not a good story. So first of all, make sure you're plugging in the ATEM Mini directly with a USB-C cable, like the one I've got here, which is not actually plugged in because I'm going over the network to mine. So yeah, first connect with a short USB-C cable. Secondly, the computer just might be too slow to do it, which is why I don't like using computers to stream, because you kind of need a beefy computer and it costs a lot to get that in a laptop. The new MacBook Pros, like the 2019s, should handle it fine. I haven't actually done it myself, but it should work fine. I definitely have tried this on my 12-inch MacBook, like the little tiny one, with an i7 processor, so it's got a decent processor. It really can't keep up with it. I can't even use it in like Zoom. Not a good deal. And then I saw a follow-up. This issue does not occur with the Elgato. So if I remember correctly, the Elgato, the HD60 is, I think it's doing the other type of USB webcam, which is the YUV video format instead of the MJPEG. That could be one of the differences. It could be that your computer is such that that other video format is easier for it to deal with, which is why the Elgato one works. Unfortunately, the ATEM does not have the ability to switch between the two. It's only MJPEG. So yeah, if it's not working for your computer, try a different computer, try a shorter cable. One of the things that Elgato does is it plugs directly into the USB port, so it's the shortest possible USB cable, which helps as well. And then yeah, can you if I use OBS, does that mean my laptop now becomes the web encoder, hence more CPU, which defeats the purpose of the Mini Pro? Yes. So if you are going to be using an ATEM Mini for as an input into OBS, you probably don't need the Pro version. The Pro version has a couple of advantages, a couple of new features. I think there was another question about the differences between the Pro and the Mini as well. I can't find it. But the Pro has the built-in encoder, which streams over the network, which is my favorite feature of it. And that's what I'm using right now. This is being pushed to YouTube directly from the ATEM Mini Pro. One of the other cool things it has is the multi-view. So this screen is actually plugged into the, sorry for that glare. This screen is plugged into the ATEM Mini Pro, which is so that I can see what it's doing. That's a feature that only the Pro has. The regular one does not. If you're going to be using this as an input into OBS, and if you don't need the multi-view, which you probably don't at that point, don't bother with the Pro, just get the cheaper one, because you're going to be using your CPU to encode and stream to YouTube at that point anyway. And at twice the cost, the Pro is a good deal, but the ATEM Mini is still, like the $300 one is extremely affordable for what it is. And if that's all you need out of it, then that is definitely what I recommend, because it's so much cheaper. So, okay, speaking of USB, while we're on USB, thanks, John. So John's question is how to interface with Zoom via Ethernet so I can use USB-C to record to the drive. I don't think that's possible. I'm pretty sure that Zoom will not be able to. Oh, hey, thanks for the super chat. By the way, if you super chat me, the background color changes to the color of the super chat. Let me just finish on Zoom really quick. So yeah, Zoom expects a USB webcam. So you need to plug it in via USB, which means you then can't record from the ATEM Mini to the drive, because that takes up the USB port. You might be able to jump through some hoops by turning like the RTMP stream into a virtual webcam on your computer, but at that point you're going through so much trouble to make that work that it's probably not worth it, and it's going to introduce too much delay anyway. So thank you. Oh, I only show the first names on here, so the name got cut off, but this is the building sheriff. I need to record and then stream a video file as live and then transition And then transition to live. What do you think about sending a video file from a camera's playback function over HDMI? Oh, got it. Yes. So if you are running a program where you are, you have like a pre-recorded clip and then you want to like a little intro clip or whatever, and then you want to switch to a live shot. This is totally doable with this. So, the camera playback over HDMI, it's going to very much depend on the camera. So some of the camera playbacks over HDMI like always show the like overlays and controls and stuff. Some of them will do like a clean HDMI out of what you're playing. So it's worth testing that. You can test it with a camera just by plugging it into a monitor or a TV. And whatever you see on that monitor is what will show up in the ATEM. So that's why you can test that out right now without worrying about the ATEM. That could definitely work. That does mean you're going to be like on the camera, like hitting play, and then you make sure you switch away from it when the clip is done. The other way to do it is to get a dedicated playback device, and there's a couple of different versions of those. There's a little cheap one. It's called like Mica Spec. I have that for. It's usually used for like video installations where you just want a video clip to play on a loop on a projector or something. It's like $40. It's a good deal. Has a little remote. There's also like the sort of pro version, which is the Blackmagic HyperDeck Studio Mini. I think I demoed that. I think it was last week. And the cool part about that is that you can actually, from the ATEM Mini, tell that device to start running a clip. So when you switch to that device's input, it'll start running, which is the opposite of this. You're talking about stopping, like switching after it stops. But you could do that with macros anyway. So definitely a couple of options for you. I would say try the camera output option because it's probably the cheapest if you already have a camera. It does depend on whether the camera outputs playback over clean HDMI or if it includes the little overlays from the camera. So yeah, thanks for the super chat. I appreciate it. Let's take a look at, where was I in the chat? I think that was all the questions before we did the intros. Okay, we got the audio delay question. That's an interesting one. How does the Mini handle a 4x3 input? Let's say I convert a component source to HDMI. Does the ATEM Mini Pro crop it, or is there a way to do it manually? I don't know if I've actually tried this myself. I've plugged in iPads into the ATEM, and the iPad is not 16:9, and it does add it just has black bars on the side. But I'm not actually sure if it's the iPad doing that or the ATEM doing that. I think it might be the iPad doing that. So if I remember correctly, the ATEM accepts actually only two resolutions, like 1920 by 1080 and 720. But that's a good test. I don't think I have any of those converters or any sources that are 4x3, but it's a good question. Okay. Follow-up question about long HDMI cables. My Amazon Basics $60 100-foot fiber optic arrived last night. Plugged it in and it looks great. That's awesome. Thanks for following up on that. We were getting, a lot of people were wondering about how to get longer HDMI cables into the ATEM Mini. HDMI cables are pretty limited in terms of distance they can run directly. It also heavily depends on the camera's output. I have some cameras that work fine on a 20-foot cable and other cameras that can't handle it at all. So fiber optic is a cool way to do that much longer without adding a lot more converters in between. So that's awesome to hear that. Even the Amazon Basics brand. Great. Here's one from Lewis. Would you use an ATEM Mini Pro over a Sling Studio for events? This is an excellent question, and I am looking forward to finding out the answer myself as well. I have been using the Sling Studio for events a lot, actually, and that all kind of stopped a couple months ago, of course. And I have not actually had the ATEM Mini Pro when I have had an in-person event to go and stream. And I am very curious to see how I whether it's actually easier than a Sling Studio to use in that setting. I suspect it actually will be a lot better of an experience. So, yeah. Oh, there's another super chat. My background just turned green. But yeah, so I will definitely like follow up on this, because one of my videos from a couple months ago was about using the ATEM Mini in live events, which was I think the last time this event ran. And it takes a lot of wires, which is one of the advantages of the Sling Studio. But I do like the fact that it's all hardware based and it's a lot more solid. From the building sheriff, thank you for the super chat. I looked at the HDMI devices. Do I need to control this from my computer? Could you explain how I see and activate that file? Sorry for hogging. No problem. I did forget what we were talking about. Oh, the HDMI playback. So let's, yeah. So if we're talking about like, one of the, like the, I wish I had it with me. Maybe I'll do another, I should just start bringing all the random crap I have that is remotely related to this when I do these streams. The Mica spec is it's about this big. It has an SD card slot and an HDMI slot. And I'm pretty sure the only way to control it is the buttons on the front, and it has a little remote with it. So that's the only way to control that one, but it's like $40, very good deal. If you're using a HyperDeck, then you can, you would be able to start and stop it from macros in the ATEM Mini, which means you can make buttons on whatever control interface you're doing to start and stop the playback. So that would work for the HyperDeck. If you are using some other HDMI device, yeah, however, it depends on the device. So that would, yeah, that would, I'm not sure I understand the question about what file to activate. So feel free to clarify that. But yeah, thank you for the super chat. Okay. Oh, so back to the Skype question. I'll take a look at that. I'm curious to see if it works just flat out by sending their audio back over. It'll be a like clean copy of their audio. So in theory, Skype, it should be easy for Skype to cancel out. That'd be cool, because that would be a lot easier. And I wouldn't have to have like a totally separate mixer for that. TechByte says, I've been using the Rodecaster Pro. I can support 2 remote audio connections and support built-in mix minus. Yeah, the Rodecaster Pro is a super awesome looking device. It's basically exactly made for that use case. I'm not at all surprised that it works gloriously with that. It's not cheap though, so that's the only downside. Handlebar Mike says, have you used wireless HDMI transmitters with the ATEM Mini Pro? Are there any you would recommend? I have used 2. I have used one of the, I think it's the Ori, how do you say it? OREI brand. That is nice because it's cheap. They're like relatively affordable. Major downside is that there is a huge delay. So like you would not use it for live video. It's like a full half second or more out of sync. Not good for like a camera on a person. However, it's totally fine for slides from a computer, because it doesn't really matter if it's that much delayed. The nice thing about that is it's very cheap, and it's fine. I've used that. I think that was what I was using in the video at the last event. That should be pretty recently on my channel. One of the other ones that I've used is the Hollyland Mars 300. That is a very expensive device. However, it is very good. There is basically no delay, and you can use it with a camera from like an actual camera with a person on it, and you won't notice a delay at all. So those are the 2 I would recommend, depending on whether or not you care about the delay. Oh, so we were talking about the Stream Deck. Stream Deck will not work unless it's connected via USB to the same computer. The ATEM is also connected via USB to. Kind of. So it's actually more complicated than that, which is one of the reasons I'm not a huge fan of this. The Stream Deck connects to the computer via USB. It's just a USB device with USB buttons. There's software on that computer that then translates those button presses to commands that get sent over the network. And that means that you actually don't need the ATEM Mini plugged in via USB. You, however, do need it plugged in to the network. So you actually have to have your ATEM Mini network set up in addition to the USB from the Stream Deck. So it takes a lot to get that running. Now, you know, it's fine like when you're setting up a space for that, dedicated space for it. But yeah, you do need the USB for the Stream Deck into the computer. You need the ATEM Mini over the network in order to have that work. I'm actually trying to figure out if I can use a Raspberry Pi instead of my laptop to do that conversion, because then I can just have it permanently installed here and I don't need to worry about my laptop being plugged into the right setting, and I can actually just use the Stream Deck with my laptop turned off. So I'm hoping to pull that off sometime soon. Is it possible to put picture-in-picture and show chat messages at the same time, or is Chroma and chat at the same time? Yeah, so I'm not set up to do that here. And especially because I'm down one computer right now. So I can't even show you, I can't bring up the ATEM software while a chat message on the screen because it looks like this. But you can do this if you set it up differently than what I have. So actually, let me just go to, let me show you this. So this is what I'm looking at. This is my computer screen. If I had these flipped, which I think somebody sent me a pull request on GitHub for this. If you put this chat section down at the bottom, then you can actually use the downstream keyer. And if you use the downstream keyer, you just crop that down. And if you do it that way, you use the downstream key for the chat. And because it's got the black background, it still does the Luma key and it works fine. That frees up the upstream keyer for picture-in-picture or Chroma key. So I'm probably going to end up redoing my setup here in order to support that, because that's very cool. And I don't care about using the downstream keyer for like a little logo overlay, which is the other thing you can use it for. Yeah, that is, that's how you would do that is, yeah, you would use the downstream key for the chat messages. All right. So here's a from TechBytes. Since the ATEM Mini will only use HDMI port 1 for picture-in-picture, should I get an additional ATEM Mini and plug it into HDMI 1 to be able to switch cameras for picture-in-picture? No, so that's actually not the case. Let me go back to show you the computer. The button on the ATEM Mini, if you press the picture-in-picture button on the ATEM Mini, then it's kind of like saved macros in there built in, saved settings built in. And if you do use the button, then yeah, it's like forced it to input 1 and the size is, fixed. However, you can change it in the software control. So if you go into, here, let me do this with my test one so I don't mess up my stream. 6. Okay, now I'm on, yes, I'm on the test one. So if you, and I can actually show you the multi-view here. What am I doing? I'm showing you picture-in-picture. Okay, I need to actually make that that's too small. Let me go back to the other ATEM and go to the upstream key, and I'm going to just zoom, make that a little bigger. All right. So now you can see the multi-view from the test ATEM Mini. So let me go back over. Oh my God, sorry about the garbage trucks in the alley. So if you're in the ATEM Mini and you want to do a picture-in-picture with something from a different input, you would, it stopped right outside. Okay. Anyway, I can do, so we've got, let's see, 2 cameras on this ATEM, my wide shot, my close-up shot. I'm gonna do picture-in-picture of the main camera over that one. So I can actually, and that's an input too, right? So so your fill source, this is what you want to do. You want to go in here and just choose any of the other inputs. So you can actually say that your fill source is color bars if you want to. And then when you put that on the air, I think we've got it set up in the chat right now as the chat layout. Let's just put this at 0, scale it to 0.25. And now you can see that I've got picture-in-picture wherever I want. And that's not just input 1. And if I wanted to make it input 1, I can. But it could also do the other way around, right? So really, it's just about going into the software control app and tweaking the settings for whatever your whatever you want to show, whatever input you want to show as your picture-in-picture. That's the same for chroma keying and everything else as well. Cool. So hopefully that answers that. You can change which input is used for picture-in-picture. Robert says the Behringer Q1202 USB 4 XLR mics with 3 knobby Q4 stereo inputs. Yeah, this is a that's a decent option for mixers. There's a ton of mixers out there that do mix minus in one way or another, so that's something to keep in mind. Cool. Chris says, best from Germany. I love Germany, hoping I can go back there again sometime soon. So, looking for a recommendation on an audio device to delay the audio to sync with the video using an audio in jack. I don't want to feed the audio through the camera to sync. Yeah, if you don't want to or can't for whatever reason feed the audio into the camera, then you're going to need a separate device to delay the audio, and probably the best one for that I have here, it's not set up because I'm running my audio through the camera, is this little Behringer Shark FBQ100. I will drop a link to this, but this is meant as like a feedback destroyer for like a live event space, but it also has an audio delay feature in it, and you can adjust it very fine detailed delay on there, and that works great. I've used that before, but in my case I have a little microphone plugged into the camera, so I'm not using it at the moment. Let me go ahead and wait for that truck to go by. There we go. I should really keep these links handy. Faster. FBQ100. So there's the link. All right, I'll drop a link to the Behringer Shark delay device. FBQ100. So there you go. Alan says, can I set up scenes on the ATEM Mini, something similar to OBS? No, not at all. So the ATEM Mini works completely differently. It doesn't have the concept of scenes, but you can kind of approximate that with macros, which is what I'm doing here. So I've got a macro for, my camera angle, and then one that brings on the chat interface, which is actually a, like if I just should go back to this other tab, you'll see it's actually just my computer screen, like slid down so that black part of the chat window appears down at the bottom, and then it uses the key. It's kind of like a scene, but what it's actually doing is when I press that, it's running a macro, which then sends all of the commands to switch the state of the switcher, which is very different from a scene-based layout. So you can get close to that, but there are definitely some limits on what the ATEM can do compared to OBS. Okay. So we were talking about Zoom earlier. Is it possible to set up Zoom as a streaming service and do it that way, like it has presets for Twitch and YouTube? No. So Zoom input is going to be just a webcam. It does not have the ability to input from a RTMP encoder, which is what the ATEM Mini is. So there's no way to go into the ATEM Mini and say, push a video feed to Zoom, because Zoom is an app running on your own computer, which gets video in from a webcam. So that doesn't work. What you can use Zoom for is going to YouTube. Zoom can stream directly to YouTube if you have one of the paid tiers, but that's a completely different story. Jose says, how did you bring in your YouTube comments into the stream? I've done another stream about that. Go check it out. It's using a very clever CSS hack to make this work. Jono says, I really like to have cameras switch automatically. Is this done through a macro? Can you talk about this a little? You could kind of do it with a macro. I can show you how to build that. I would not say this is a good solution. What I mean by you can kind of do it is, let me go back to my computer. So what you would have to do is, so if you want to have your camera switching, I'll show you multi-view, like to that, wait for a few seconds, switch to that one, wait for a few seconds, switch to that one. What you can do, let's go to the macros and go ahead and create a new one. You would say auto camera switching record, and then whatever you press in here is going to be recorded, right? So you do that, and if you just do that, now the problem is that if you do this back and forth, it's actually just recording these as instant switches, and you're not going to get that like delay. What you have to do is you have to go up here and click add pause, and then you could say like add pause for 5, I think that's seconds. Cool. Switch, add pause, 5 seconds. Switch, add pause, 5 seconds, right? And then you're not going to do that forever. If you save this out, we're going to call this auto switch. If you look at what's recorded, let's only save the macros. And if you look at what's recorded, there it is. The macros, here it is. I don't know why it said switching. Did I type that? That's funny. What's recorded is a camera switch, macro sleep, camera switch. You can take this and then just copy and paste. And you can just go, all right, we're going to do this a bunch of times. And if you then save this back out and restore it, then you get, if you ran that macro, it would just start doing that. I don't know really what would happen because I've never tried running macros for that long. I don't actually know what happens like if they get interrupted. Like what happens if you switch to another camera or something. So it might work. I would say it's a weird hack. But yeah, you could kind of approximate it. It's not really meant for that. Did I see another super chat? Yeah, I did. Thank you from Marcus. Thanks for the super chat. I actually don't know what currency that is. Never seen that one. My church is trying to get a live stream going for our services during lockdown. Is it possible to overlay lyrics from ProPresenter while having the band play on the main screen on the ATEM Mini? So I've never used ProPresenter, but what you would do is you would go and set up a computer running that software, and as long as it can send the lyrics over HDMI as an input into the ATEM Mini, then it'll work fine. So like I'm doing the chat here, if you don't want, if you want to like key out the black, you can use the Luma key to get rid of the black so that it becomes transparent. You can see it. I thought I had fixed this, but you can see that there's a little problem here where the text is too black, so it's getting keyed out, and then like it's my hands behind it. So you would want like gray text instead of black. But you could then either like just have it full screen, or you could like scale it down, have the lyrics on the side. This is a browser window. This is a browser window, right? Which means if I had the crop set right, but if I just scale the window, then you can see it's wrapping the text differently. So you can do that too with ProPresenter, assuming you can change the size of that. But yeah, sorry, I haven't actually used ProPresenter specifically myself, but that's the idea. It's like if you can get it to an HDMI, then you can do it. Oh yeah, I should mention AJ, the CEO, his channel, he specializes in like church live streaming. So go check out him. He's got a bunch of good videos on using that kind of software as well. All right. Where was I? This is a good question. Is there a way to save all the ATEM settings when recording a macro instead of clicking on every button? I have not found a way to do that. So yeah, the way the macros work is when you hit record, whatever you do in the app gets saved into the macro. And if you don't do anything, it doesn't get written into the macro. So that means if you, oh, thanks for the super chat again. I'll get back to you on that one. Okay. So we're talking about the macros. So if you press a button, it gets written. If you don't press the button, it doesn't get written, which means you can end up in a weird state sometimes with the macros if you just like press on air on one of your keys. But then when you're ready to go use that macro, if your switcher was in a different state, the only thing the macro is going to do is bring the keyer on air. So then it might be bringing the wrong key on air. And I struggled with this when I was building these macros for this program of like the show chat, which one of the things the show chat macro does is brings the key on air. I had to make sure that every setting that I needed in that keyer was part of the macro. And there's two ways to do it. You can either, when you're making the macro, let me go back to the macros tab. So if I just say test, the way that I've found is the easiest. If I want to like, if this is in the right state for what I want it to end up on, you basically just like toggle every setting that caused it to be in this state. So you toggle that, you go in here, you choose that, you press enter on each of these form fields. You make sure that you toggle that on and off, toggle that on and off, toggle that on and off. And at that point, when you go and look at what's saved in the in that macro, let's go down to the bottom. You can see that all of the things that I pressed, all the things that I touched, then get written as part of the macro. The other thing you can do is you can create the sort of like library of these settings in a separate file somewhere, because this is just text, right? So you can just like copy this to a separate file somewhere and be like, oh, here's what I need when I want to set my switcher in this state. And then I'm going to go and make a new macro that's a slight variation on this, drop this into a new macro and copy that text, and it works great. So it takes a while to build up that library, but just like using the device and changing all the settings is the best way to do that. Zoom L8 has proper mix minus. Cool. That's a good one too. Kyle says, is there any way to record audio only direct to USB drive? I don't think so. I think you have to, it's going to record a video file. You could just make it a black video though, if you don't want video, and that would save disk space. Cool. Okay. Thank you, Wes. Appreciate it. So back to sound delay. I'm not gonna have any time to set up the networking on this thing, but this is a lot of questions. This is great. Audio source is also plugged into the ATEM Mic 1, and then both audio and video from the ATEM via USB. Would it help to have a separate audio interface? Oh, that's a thought. If you want to run your audio into your computer totally like outside of the ATEM, that would work. I don't know if that would be better or worse in terms of syncing it up and being able to fix the delay. I think it depends on the computer, because obviously running two USB devices, pulling data from two USB devices is going to be more work. So it has to be able to handle that as well. Jonathan, thank you for the super chat. South African Rand, awesome. Can you have an NDI input on the ATEM Mini? Thanks for the super chat. No, so ATEM Mini is HDMI only input. If you saw one of my earlier live streams, I tried and crashed and burned in horrible flames to bring in an NDI source in the ATEM Mini using one of the NDI to HDMI converters from Skype. It did not work. Due to audio bitrate mismatch between Skype and that device. I'm going to try a couple of others. I have a couple that are going to show up at some point, and then I will let you know how those work. Basically, you have to have a separate device to capture the NDI feed over the network and convert it to HDMI, and then plug it into one of the ports on the ATEM Mini. So it's doable if you have another device. Thank you, Ronnie, for the super sticker. My little CSS hack doesn't support super stickers because I haven't actually got one yet. So I'm gonna have to work on that, but here you can see the sticker. It's very cute. Thank you very much. What are we talking about? Good question. What are we talking about? Cool. Okay, I found a few more questions that I had skipped before. Wow. All right. Can you show that geographic map before you close the show? Nope. Sorry, I closed it because it eats API credits when it's open. The way that the YouTube API works is every API call costs some amount of credits that they use for rate limiting, and I don't remember how many a query for the chat costs, but it adds up pretty fast, and you only get 10,000 per day before your app goes through. Like, you have to go through a whole approval process and blah blah blah, and probably pay them some money. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. If I have it set to pull every 5 seconds or so, so it eats those credits pretty quick. Joe says, how do you show and lay out the chat questions? I did a stream on that earlier. Go check out my channel. I'm decided to leave these streams up because they're fun and people like to be able to go back and watch them. Can you use network commands in macros like the Stream Deck? No. So the way the macros work is whatever you've got in the software control interface can be saved into a macro, but nothing else. So if you can do it in the software control interface, you can write it to a macro. Pretty much that's only controlling the ATEM Mini itself, with the exception of controlling the hyperdeck. Because the ATEM Mini can send commands to the hyperdeck itself, those can be written into a macro. But that's about it. Nothing, you can't just do like arbitrary stuff. Would you be able to split the HDMI output from the ATEM into a projector and a live view solo live stream? Sure. Yeah, you could split the HDMI output. Oh, there's another super chat. Thank you. I will come back to that in a second. It's fun being able to tell when my colors change. Yeah, so there's one HDMI port on the ATEM Mini. Right now I'm using it for multi-view, of course. So, you're seeing, or I can see the control interface here. That means I would not want to stream that window, of course, right? So if you didn't need multi-view, if you just have like even just the regular ATEM Mini, not the Pro, you can just take that and split it into multiple places and stream from a separate device as well. So that would totally work. Wes says, fun fact, a nice storage case for the ATEM Mini Pro is a Nintendo Switch case. Yes, I discovered this. I have one at home. It is somehow exactly the right size. I don't know why. It's wonderful. Still store not saving after reboot is a nuisance, especially on the Pro, which you don't need a PC to stream anymore. Is there a way to make it save all the still store graphics? I know this is probably my biggest complaint of the Pro specifically, because what it means is that, yeah, if you shut down the device, move somewhere, boot it up, your graphics are gone, and you need to restore them from a computer, which means you have to have a computer with you to plug it in, which is unfortunate. I've told Blackmagic about this. We'll see what happens. I doubt they'll be able to ship a firmware update for it because it requires actual storage space on the device, and I doubt there is any. So it's a bummer. That's probably my only complaint about this thing. What do you think of the Roland brand switchers in comparison to Blackmagic? The Roland ones, I feel like I like that they're hardware switchers also. They're very solid, and I like them over a lot of the other software-based switchers, or more sort of like app ones that feel a little bit less connection between your button presses and what happens on the stream. But the Roland ones, like, they have not been keeping up with Blackmagic. The Blackmagic ATEM, like the Pro, ATEM Mini Pro, is just so far beyond what any of the Roland ones can do. It'll be really a trick to see if they can catch up with that. The Roland ones, I do have more like effects. So for like, if you're using it in like an in-person event space, or for some sort of like, in a show or something, you can do like negative effects or color select, where you just highlight only one color in the video, or what's the like solarizing, things like that. Those are fun. I don't have any use for those, so I don't care. But yeah. Dusty Russell says, can you send the Ethernet stream to OBS? I don't think you can directly. You would need a thing on the other end on your computer, which is an RTMP server, which would then expose that source in OBS. I've never looked for that. That's an interesting idea. There would definitely be a delay, some amount of delay, so keep that in mind. But what I would look for is if there's a RTMP source for OBS. That's what I would search for. Brad says, when I have the upstream keyer set up and happen to hit a picture-in-picture button by mistake, it resets the upstream keyer. Can that be disabled? Nope, I don't think so. That's one of the really unfortunate things about, this is my other complaint. Okay, the other complaint I have about the Blackmagic ATEM Mini. The buttons on the top, like the picture-in-picture buttons, they're pretty much useless because I never actually want that specific layout. I want other layouts. And basically means I'm never going to use those buttons. And I would much rather have those buttons be things that I could program to run macros, for example. So I never use those buttons, which means instead I run everything through macros separately. And that way you don't end up with that like resetting the keyer because your macro just brings it right back again. So yeah, I would always use macros to control this thing instead of the buttons on the top. And it's too bad that there's so many buttons that are basically then useless. And I just remembered that there was another super chat from Shan. Thank you very much. I'm a wedding videographer. If I connect, how's business right now? If I connect 4 Hollyland Mars 400s to ATEM Mini Pro, would it be possible to both project live to a projector and live stream since there's only one HDMI output? I'm assuming you want to project. Okay, so if you have the ATEM Mini Pro, you can live stream directly from it, and you don't need to go. You wouldn't need to use the live view to stream. So if you do want to use the live view to stream, you would need a way to split the HDMI out from your ATEM Mini, which you can just use any HDMI splitter. Make sure you find a good one. Some of them are pretty crap. But you could use an HDMI splitter to take that HDMI out, run one to the projector and one to the other encoder. And that should work fine. The live view, I don't think it supports a pass-through. Some of the devices also support like a pass-through HDMI out, which would be the other way to do it. So I'm assuming that was the question. Let me know if that didn't answer it though. And okay. So the splitters I'm using are these little teeny tiny ones. Like you might be able to see them on the desk. I don't want to touch it in case yeah. So it's this little thing, USB powered, very small. They've been working fine for me, which is cool. And I just threw off my autofocus. Gosh, I just realized we are like already at an hour, but there's a lot of people here, so I think we should just keep going. I'm up for sticking around for a little longer because we got a lot of questions in the chat. Let me go for another like 15 minutes or maybe even 30. I'll try to get to more of these questions. But yeah, Shan, do let me know if they answer the question. Otherwise, follow up in the chat below. It'd be great to use NDI from the PTZ optics cameras. Yeah, there's a lot of cool cameras. The PTZ ones tend to be all NDI, but it's not really a good way to get it into the ATEM Mini without going through one of those converters, and that's expensive. But yep. Any thoughts on the ATEM Mini Pro versus Sling Studio? I use the Sling Studio a lot. The Sling Studio is one of those sort of like it is a dedicated device, which is I like, and I like that it's not actually a computer. However, it does feel a lot more. It feels like a lot more disconnected between when you do things and when it's output. So the controller is an iPad, first of all, which is nice in that like it's just sort of by default everything is wireless, which is awesome. So it's actually really easy to set up and like use in a whole bunch of different settings, which is great. But it like I don't have it here. I don't have it set up here right now. But like when you want to do switching between angles or like bringing in graphics and stuff, every time you tap on it and do something, there's like just this little delay before it actually like takes effect. Whereas like when I press a button on this, even this iPad, over the network, it's not a network issue. If I press switch camera, it's instantly switch, and I can see that this device is responding to me immediately. And I really like that like immediate feedback. And the ATEM Mini and actually the Roland ones also, they have that like immediate feedback of like when you press this button, this thing is actually happening. Whereas the Sling Studio and actually the one I did the video on Sunday, which is coincidentally also got an iPad app to control it, every time you touch it, if there's like this little lag where you just kind of feel like you're not really controlling it. It feels like you're going through something else to make that work. So I like how solid the ATEM feels. Okay. Zach says ATEM Mini came with a 1080p 60 frames per second as the default. Should I change it to 30? I don't think there's a lot of so you're gonna want to stream 60 frames per second for like gaming, obviously. If it's not that, I would stream at 30 because you don't need that many frames of like a face talking, and it saves a lot of bandwidth and it's just a lot easier on everything involved. If you're running it into a computer for Zoom, definitely change it to 30 because then Zoom has a much easier time of encoding that. Mark says, is your audio room echo intentional? No. Which I talked about this at the beginning. I'm sorry for the mess of the audio. I'm building this room right now. You can see my little cordless drill over there. Yesterday, I put the drywall on this wall. It was exposed studs and insulation, and it turns out that exposed insulation does a very good job at dampening sound because it's just a bunch of soft surfaces. And I was doing that until yesterday evening and did not have time to deal with putting up sound blankets or anything because I don't even know if I have any or how to hang them. So yeah, apologies for the horrible room echo. I'm just talking at a flat wall right now. But yeah, eventually this will be a lot nicer. Okay. So Coley says, what's the best way to get into streaming business? Asking conferences if they need one, proposing services to somebody else. So I got into it by the company I was working at, we were hosting meetups at our office. And that was a very easy way to just be like, well, I'll film your meetup. I'm obviously not going to get paid for that, but that starts building up a portfolio. After that, I started finding friends who were organizing conferences and asking them if they needed video services. And that's when I did start charging. Build up a little bit of a portfolio, do a couple for free, and then you have something to point to and be like, hey, I do this. Do you want to pay me for it? And, you'll just build it up over time. Obviously, this is probably not the best time to start a streaming business for conferences, but we'll get back to that eventually. This is an excellent time to help conferences convert their events into online events, though. So a lot of overlap there for sure. And I think I saw a super chat. Can you show your Wi-Fi network setup? Thanks, Rick. Thanks for the super chat, and thanks for trying to bring this back on topic. I thought I was going to be spending all the time setting up my little networking device here. So why don't we do this really quick? One of the things I've been really curious about is once I'm back on the road and doing more portable stuff, you're not necessarily in places that have an Ethernet line. And like right now, everything's plugged in over Ethernet, going to my server closet. But when you do a gig at a venue, you may or may not be able to get an Ethernet line. Obviously, if you can, that's way better. You get no interference, better bandwidth. It's wonderful, but you can't always. So I wanted to see what is the easiest way to get an ATEM Mini set up wirelessly. So what I've got on my desk, switch back to my desk camera. This little device. This is a travel router. This is like they're usually called travel routers, and it's got on the back. Let's see, a little better. So on the back, it's got a power. It's got USB for something, and then it's got 3 Ethernet ports. One of the Ethernet ports is meant to be an uplink if you do plug this into an Ethernet jack, like Ethernet uplink from a hotel or something. These 2 are LAN ports. So if I remember how I got this set up, I'm going to actually try this. So what I want to do is I want to plug my ATEM Mini into this device so that it has a wired connection. So to do that, I'm going to take this one out. I don't need that. And then we're going to take this, and that's going to disconnect my laptops. Yeah. Okay. We're going to plug in the ATEM Mini into this device. Now, in order to see what the ATEM Mini is doing, I want to plug in the ATEM Mini to my computer over USB so I can use the ATEM Setup app. So that wasn't the right screen. That's the right screen. So I want to use the ATEM Setup app here. And we're going to go to this test one. You can see it's got the network and USB, right? So it's my computer's talking to it over USB. It also has a network connection. And it's set to DHCP, so it's getting an IP address from this little travel router now. So the IP address it got was 192.168.60.230. You could also give it a static IP. I'm actually going to do that because I'm going to forget that IP address otherwise. So it's 192.168.60, and I'm going to give it 60.10 because I can probably remember that better. And then I'm guessing the router was 60.1. Let's try that. Cool. Yeah. So now that's got a fixed IP address in this router. I need to get my computer onto that network now in order to actually be able to talk to it over the network. So I'm going to save that, unplug the USB. Now I do not have a connection to that anymore, and I have to get my laptop onto the network. So to do that, I'm actually going to switch my Wi-Fi. This is dangerous, but the reason this is possible is because my other ATEM Mini is doing the streaming, so I can actually not worry about this. So my travel router is set up to broadcast a Wi-Fi hotspot as well. So I can join that Wi-Fi, and hopefully this works. And we should see in a second Wi-Fi. Okay, so it got the IP address of 192.168.60.237. Cool. So I should be able to now connect over the network to this device. So let's go back over to here. Manual IP address 192.168.60.10. Connect. And with any luck. Okay, cool. So what I've got now is I'm on, I have this new network between my laptop going over Wi-Fi to the travel router, and then this ATEM Mini is plugged into the travel router over Ethernet. That makes sense? So now I can, I'm back in business, and this is something I can just pick up and take to a venue. So what that travel router does is, let me bring up the travel router interface. This is the admin panel for the travel router. So this, what's very cool is that this travel router has multiple ways it can connect to the internet. One way is you can give it a cable. You can plug in an Ethernet cable, and then, if it has internet there, it'll stream, it'll be able to upload. or it can actually connect over Wi-Fi to another Wi-Fi hotspot. In this case, I've actually got it set up to tether to my phone. So this travel router is actually tethering to my phone right now, which actually means that this ATEM Mini can now stream over my phone's connection. So that's a lot of steps there, but I should have. I'm out of HDMI adapters. I don't have a way to like draw on my iPad normally, like I normally do. But what this does is means that like I can now pick up this ATEM Mini, this travel router, my phone, and hit the go live button on the ATEM Mini, and we'll be streaming. I don't think there's a. I could make a test stream and we can do it. Why don't we do that and see what happens? Let me go and make a unlisted live stream on YouTube, and I'll drop the link in the chat, and we'll do a second stream from this ATEM Mini so that you can actually see what that looks like streaming over my phone. It's a stream in a stream. So we're gonna go ahead and make a new stream. I'm doing this on a separate screen because I'm gonna need this key in a second. Oh, I can do this part. I can do this part on the screen within a stream. We're gonna make it unlisted so that only you all here can actually get to it. Cool. Create the stream, and here is the link. Let me drop that in. Sorry for all the chats. I'll get back to the chats eventually. So here's that. I'm going to copy the stream key and paste it in where you can't see it. Give me a second to do this on the other screen. I'm going to stream at streaming medium so I don't use all of my bandwidth. All right. So now we're back. Yeah, you can see, found the chat already. So this is now, again, if we go look at the connection that this has in the ATEM setup, this IP address is on my travel router, and obviously I can't change it because that's not over USB. Travel router is connected to the internet through my phone. So when I press on air, yeah, it found it. So it blinks for a couple of seconds and then it is now streaming, and back in the console here, we should see, yeah, excellent connection, stream health. And once it recognizes the video, come on, where is it? Ultra low latency, cool. Give it a second, sync back up again. Yeah, it's waiting for the host because I haven't started the stream yet. Okay, this says it's running. Normally this button turns, let me just refresh. Sometimes this app is glitchy. And come on. It's got an excellent connection. I can see that it's running. Excellent. At some point, this button up here that you can't see because my face is covering it, at some point this button will turn blue. Let's go, let's go, let's go. Still waiting on the host to start the stream. I can tell that it's streaming because it says excellent connection and it says live up here. So what's going on? How about this? Auto start. That's what we're going to do. Okay. Stop the stream on the hardware. Give us a second to time out. We're going to enable. Give it a second to time out. Come on, no data. Great. Refresh. And I should be able to enable auto start, which then YouTube should just start the stream. Come on. Do we need to do low latency? Yeah, there we go. Okay, auto start. Auto stop. So with those, this is actually an important setting. If you don't have auto start enabled, then even if you press on air on the ATEM Mini Pro, YouTube doesn't actually start the stream until you press go live. So with auto start enabled, it should now, as soon as it starts getting data, it should start streaming. and you're seeing the same. We're in the full camera view on that. There we go. Okay, now it's live. Now I've got an end stream button. So hopefully, let me know. It did this. Ahmed says you can't do 2 live streams in one account. You totally can. I just don't know why I can't see myself here. Tim says, there you are. Is this one working? For some reason, it's not showing me the preview. But cool. Okay, I am live on both devices. And you're probably seeing my full camera shot because, again, you can see the picture-in-picture on the other stream is showing the multi-view state of the other ATEM. So I can now use my hardware buttons over here to switch camera angles. And that is working over my phone. So yeah, this is streaming over my phone's LTE. So cool. That's great. And I can now pick this up and go. Awesome. I'm going to, about a 4-second delay between the two. Yeah, it's because I chose low latency here compared to ultra low on my main stream. Apparently in ultra low latency, you can't do auto start. So good to know. But that's why there's the delay. It's because it was a YouTube setting. Cool. So I'm going to actually now just stop that stream. And I'm going to stop it by pressing off button. And that should auto stop the stream on my second stream. Oh, YouTube is confused. It's saying it's been live for an hour and a half, which is my main stream. I think this just YouTube Studio doesn't know how to handle 2 live streams at the same time. But I'm glad that worked. So as soon as that realizes that there's no data, it should end the stream and then we'll be back. So to recap, this little travel router, this is the thing that you're going to want to plug in the ATEM Mini. You'll notice there's only one cable plugged in. It's plugged into the ATEM Mini Pro. This is the thing that then needs internet. It can get internet multiple ways. It can get internet through its own, through an Ethernet connection itself. It can get internet through Wi-Fi, either tethering to like a phone or tethering, or connecting to a building, a building Wi-Fi. Oh yeah, the USB port on there is for plugging in a 3G modem or a phone over USB as well. So that's actually probably a better way to do it, is plug in your phone via USB to that device instead of using the Wi-Fi. But you tell me, as long as that looked good, I'm happy with it. Cool. So that wasn't like a great tutorial, but hopefully this gives you some things to think about and like try stuff out yourself. So let's go. Thanks for playing along. That was fun. Let's go back to the chat. I wasn't looking at the chat when I was doing that. I hope I didn't. Yeah. Okay, cool. Everything worked great. Okay. So if you are just joining, I've been live for so long that we've got a bunch of new people here. Please make sure if you have a question for me, make sure you @ me. Type in my full name and it shows up orange on my screen, which is great. Also, if you super chat me, my background color changes, which is awesome. Okay, so let's take a look at the chat again. Simon says, could you not connect your laptop using another network port? Yeah, I totally could. So that's actually one of the cool things about this device. The little travel router here has 2 Ethernet ports that you can use for 2 devices. So you could use the ATEM on one port and then your computer on another port over a wire, which would definitely be better to connect it over wire instead of wireless. The reason I didn't do that here is because my laptop is also got a wired connection to my main network so that I could keep track of the comments and that was still running, and be on YouTube live. But yeah, that would be a better way to do it. The nice thing about the wireless, though, is that then you can use an iPad to control that wirelessly. Wes says, I had an issue where it wouldn't connect to the router at the location I was at. Are there things I should be prepared to know to connect the ATEM to a new location? So one way around this problem is to bring your own router like I did here. So to use that travel router as your own little local network. That I think is actually a really good idea because it gives you more backup options. So you can test ahead of time to make sure your ATEM Mini can get on that network for the little travel router. So as long as you get these things talking to each other, you then know that if you get your laptop onto the network, either wired or wirelessly, it'll work. And then it's a matter of getting that device an internet connection at the venue. And that gives you more options. So that gives you the option to connect over Wi-Fi. It gives you an Ethernet port. It's a little bit easier to debug these things on this device because it gives you more information about what's going on. Also, you can use your phone as a backup. And as you can see, it was like LTE has plenty of bandwidth for streaming now. So that when I start doing like in-person things again, I'll probably start doing that instead of relying on the ability to get the ATEM Mini itself onto the venue's network. What travel router was that? That is an excellent question. Let me drop a link into the chat. Yeah, there we go. I think this was in the description of the video. I can't actually remember if I did that. The travel router is the GL iNet 750, which has the one with the little flip up antennas, which is stronger than the other one. It's also gigabit, which is like great. So the Ethernet ports are gigabit. Super cool. Yeah, it's a great little router. Yeah, there's like other fancier routers, which like go for it. I like this one because it's relatively affordable and very, very, very small. Yeah, so Coley says it's also better to have your own network so that someone else is using the conference Wi-Fi won't change stuff on the ATEM Mini. Definitely. Like build your own little local network here, which is why I like that thing because it's so small. And that gives you your own control over like the DHCP settings and like your IP address. And you won't have to fiddle with somebody else's network when dealing with that. Good quality on the second stream. All right. Scrolling back up to the comments that I left before we took a detour and talked about, well, the main topic of the show. Mark says, thanks for the audio clarification. I just ironed out that my buffer issue by streaming in 30 instead of 60, a 2.5 hour show with Skype interview. Floorless? Is that supposed to be flawless? Yeah, that's a good point. So streaming in 30p instead of 60 will probably, because there's a lot less bandwidth going through there, the computer has an easier time keeping that stuff in sync. Mario says, can you set the ATEM Mini Pro as your external encoder and use vMix for all of your streaming and graphics? Yeah, kind of. So if you want the ATEM Mini Pro to be doing the streaming to YouTube, then you can bring graphics in from other sources over HDMI. The limit is you have to use either a Chroma key or a Luma key. So Chroma key removes the color, Luma key removes blackness. So like that's how the chat is working. The background of the chat window is actually black, and the background of this little strip here, this is actually dark gray. So the Luma key removes the black part, leaving the transparent. But you can see it's not perfect. Like your name there was actually too dark. I should have made that a little bit more gray. So that's the limit, is you have to use one of those two methods to like overlay. So it doesn't work with all graphics, because if you actually need either if you're using a green screen like Chroma key, if you need that green in the graphic, you can't do it. If you're using a Luma key and you need pure black in the graphic, you can't do it. But if you do set things up right and are aware of those limitations, you can bring in graphics from any other program over HDMI. So vMix is definitely one option. There's also H2R graphics, which is free. It's made for just doing lower thirds and title screens and things like that. There's a handful of other ones as well that can do that as well. And all right, we've been going another extra half hour. Time is flying. I should probably not keep you all here too much longer. But this has been a lot of fun. Oh yeah, Sebastian says, can you set a password to prevent others from accessing the ATEM Mini Pro via the network? That's a really good point. You cannot. There is no authentication on this. It is not meant to be on public networks. This is meant to be on a private network, which is the other reason to use a travel router. The travel router will create your own little closed off network that nobody else can get into. And then you don't have to worry about anybody getting in, and you don't need a password for it. Yeah, the ATEM stuff, like none of their things use passwords. It's just on the network. Yeah, so that's another great reason for the travel router. Cool. All right. I'm gonna wrap it up here. If you do have more questions, feel free to leave comments in this video below after it's done processing on YouTube. Thank you all for joining. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the super chats and changing my background color all the time. We'll be back next week. There's a lot of questions, so let me know what you want to focus on next week. Leave comments down below, and I'll try to bring some more stuff we can try out. We tried out this travel router today. So thank you all for joining, and I will see you all next time.